Hey folks, Steve here with a debriefing video now that GameON 2020 is over. Or I guess it's still going on as I'm recording this. It's about over. My family and I just got home a little while ago and I thought I'd record now. We didn't stay too late. It was going to go on for a few more hours, but it was more important for us to get home. And man, let me tell you guys, we had a great time, absolutely. And I'll say, when we've gone to GameON before, when it was just my wife and I, before we had our daughter, 5 days of gaming is an exhausting affair, and it is even more exhausting when you have a baby with you or a small child, and they're not sleeping great in the hotel room, and it sort of forced my wife and I to call some audibles on how we were working out the details and logistics of the convention. But we had a good time. And so I'm going to kind of break down kind of how things went. And as usual, for my wife and I, we see a lot of friends that we don't get to see very often. We catch up on what's going on with them, and we play games with the same, some of the same set of folks, play with other folks. We're getting to know more and more people all the time there, but it's always good to see our oldest friends we've been gaming with. And just that alone makes it worth the trip to go, and it definitely was a big deal for us to try to go as a family, and it worked out really great. Like I said, besides some rough sleeping on some nights and some rough mornings, really our daughter behaved well. We did great there, and just a great time, right? So I'm gonna run through kind of the post-con report for all the things that we did over the past 5 days of gaming. Again, like I said, as I'm recording this, there's some afternoon gaming folks were doing, but we got home. It took us a little while to get home. We just wanted to get settled back into the routine. And I'm like unpacking bags. I've got the games that I took. I've got them here to show on camera. And the rest of the family's taken a good, well-earned nap. So this is my opportunity to get you guys some quick after the fact report, an after action report, I guess, of some sort. So before I get into how all the games went, I'll say in terms of the stuff that I sold, I managed to find the homes for that copy of Empire of the Sun, as well as Next War Korea, who had buyers before the convention. I managed to tag up with those guys, and they got their games, which was great. Now, before the convention started, and I'm sorry I don't have anything on camera yet, we're going to get to that, I tried to say, I'm going to go home with one new game. And I bet you can just imagine what I'm going to say. I came home with more than that, but I'll say I did it on a frugal manner, I'll tell you. So I'm going to put some stuff on screen here of the stuff that I purchased at the convention, either from the SWAT table or just, there was also, what's really nice about GameON is the guys who run it, they get games gifted from publishers, and they do sort of a raffle for free games, and I think it was Friday night they did that. The problem for me was I got my name drawn, which was great, but I either already owned a lot of the things that were prizes, or they were like expansions to games that I didn't have or I didn't care about, and so what I got was sort of like the leftover stuff. I guess I'll talk to that first. So I got Avengers versus XMen Tastemaster game with some expansion. The box doesn't even look like new. I don't know if this is like a used game or this has just been sitting around for a while or what. But this was sort of like the leftover thing that I just grabbed. And it looks like it's some sort of dice game. It's got some character cards, all of them being sort of obviously from the Avengers X-Men comic universe. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. I might play it. I might gift it to somebody. I don't know. I gotta check it out. So I got that for free. Another game that I got for free, and this was sort of a prearranged thing. My good buddy was getting rid of, like, he basically said I could have it if I was interested in it, and I got from Compass Games Korea Fire and Ice. This is the first game in the OSS series from designer Adam Starkweather. I'll say a couple of things about this particular title. It uses kind of its own sort of operational combat system. It is meant to sort of be a simpler alternative maybe to like something like OCS. And I've read the rules to this from cover to cover. my understanding is the rules that come with the game were very poor, and a lot of people were upset with that. And eventually, on Compass Games' website, they have this 3.0 rule set, and I read through that. And to me, the rules seemed clear, and I understood everything, and so I was interested in giving it a shot. I was going to maybe buy a copy, but then my buddy said, hey, how about I just give you mine? And it's unpunched. So I got this for free. Just, he gifted it over. I would like to try it out. And I'll say that there is another game in the series of OSS called Vietnam Rumor of War. And I looked into that game as well, and I was going to purchase it from Compass Games, but I just found a lot of really weird problems with how that game is trying to portray history, and it's getting a lot of stuff either wrong or really weird that doesn't make any sort of sense to the historical progression of the war, like, the Viet Cong getting access to NVA mechanized forces very early in the conflict. It's just really weird stuff in the Vietnam game, but those problems don't seem to exist in the Korea game. So I'm probably not going to buy the Vietnam game until that game gets fixed up, and my conversations on Board Game Geek with Adam Starkweather point to it's probably not going to get fixed. I don't know what's happening there, but check out those forum posts if you're interested in understanding that. But to me, at least the Korea game seemed sound, and that everything seemed to map together well. So got this for free. We'll check it out maybe at some point. And then I purchased a few more games. I got this for my wife and I. This is just a puzzle game that, like, it's a one and done. You do it and you've completed the puzzle or the mystery or whatever. I just got it some fun for my wife and I to try together. It was like $15 or something. Not a big deal. I got it from a vendor that goes to GameON Con called Round the Table. It's a local shop that sells board games and war games in the Seattle metro area. And they show up and they sell stuff, so I bought that from them. I bought, this is a very interesting purchase on my part, for $10 I got a copy of 1950, which is a game on the Korean War, just like Korea Fire and Ice is, which I just showed on camera. This is a game that is actually inspired by Korea Fire and Ice, and it is published by CSL Games, which I have one other game from them, 1870. I showed an unboxing video of that way back. This is an unpunched copy that somebody had opened, checked it out. I got it for like $10, seemed reasonable to me, and I think it might be fun to compare and contrast this game with Korea Fire and Ice. So just something neat I picked up. Should be a faster playing version of the Korean War, the original Korean War. And I think at one point at the convention I had this, Korea Fire and Ice, and Next War Korea all within a foot of each other in my backpack. So just a lot of Korean conflict stuff for some reason. But there you go. I picked that up. I picked up this for $5, which is Stalin's War. I got this at the swap table, just like I did with 1950. People just, gamers coming and selling games for really cheap because it's more like a friend-to-friend handoff with a little bit of cash in between, beer's worth of money for this one. So this is a Ted Racer design, and me, I'm getting close to owning most of the Ted Racer games out there. This is a card-driven hex and counter game. So you can see it's an East Front game, and I know we've got a number of East Front games. I own a number of East Front games. Figured why not for another one, $5, why not? And it's card-driven. Cards look somewhat similar to things like Paths of Glory. It is not, it is different than, say, Barbarossa to Berlin, which is a point-to-point map, where this is hexes, and this is East Front only. So, I don't know. It's just something I wanted to try, because I'm going to try to get my wife to play it with me, because it's card-driven, which she likes. It's also Hex and Counter, which she doesn't quite like, but this is my secret way of trying to get her to play Hex and Counter with me. So, for $5, it was hard to go wrong. I think there's some mixed opinions about this game, but I'm willing to give it a shot, if only to have another card-driven game to play with my wife. So I picked up Stalin's War, and then finally, and this is the one that I'm pretty stoked on because I've been wanting to get this game for quite a long time, is Great War in Europe Deluxe, which is a Ted Racer design, another Ted Racer, go figure, and covers World War I on multiple theaters. And it is basically an operational game. I wouldn't call it strategic, because that's not really what the game does. It is it is a lot of operational coverage in the box. So there are maps for the West Front, there's maps for the Italian Front, there's a map for the East Front, and there's a map for the Near East Front, the Ottoman Front. And so it's like, hey, I got a lot of World War I games. Why do I need another one? Well, I really like World War I, so I'm going to just pick up whatever World War I games I can, and it's fun to contrast them. So it's interesting that, like, I have Der Weltkrieg, which is very zoomed in, or much more zoomed in terms of operational gameplay. This is a little more zoomed out, but it's also going to be a little faster playing. So, gosh, I could dial that zoom level, right? If we're thinking about like a zoom or a telescoping in of what level of detail of World War I. This is a little more zoomed out, but it's not quite a strategic game like Balance of Powers or Fatal Alliances or Paths of Glory or something like that. It's a little more zoomed in than strategic level. A little more zoomed in, but more zoomed out than Der Weltkrieg, right? But it's still operational in nature. And, I think there's some mixed opinions about this game online as well, and just some people saying that the Central Powers are really screwed there. I don't know how much of that is true. I've heard arguments against that. So for me, it's just, well, I have an opportunity to check it out. This was a pre-owned game, so it is punched. I don't know if it's complete. I assume it's complete. It also seemed to include some stickers that someone had crafted to fix some of the map errata. So I'll have to look at the map to see if they actually applied stickers, but looks like there's a couple of copies of the stickers in the box, so I made out pretty good. It's like I appear to have the errata stuff as well. I'll need to verify all of that at some point here, but this was a very cool buy. I got it from a good guy I know, Rob, and basically the money I got for selling Empire of the Sun and Next War Korea went to buying this, so it was good purchase. Looking forward to checking this one out. I don't think you can play the individual fronts by themselves, unfortunately. At least that's what it seems like based on my reading of the rules. So it's not like I can just pick up the West Front, I don't think. So I don't know, weird circumstances, but cool purchase. And I think that's all the new stuff I acquired. So as a reminder, you know how it goes, right? Like I was expecting to bring home one new war game. The reality is I came home with 4 new war games. So that's just the way it goes sometimes, right, guys? Okay, so I'm actually going to put a quick cut here because my camera, when it gets really long clips, tends to freak out eventually. So rather than interrupt myself, I'm just going to put a cut here, and then we're going to talk about each day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, how things went. And I'll talk a little bit about the games we played and my thoughts on them. These won't be full reviews, but there will be first impressions for things I have not played before. So we'll be right back in a second. Okay, so let's talk about Wednesday. I think what I'm going to do with the camera, since sometimes it screws up, is I'm going to talk about Wednesday, and then I'll put a cut, and then I'll do Thursday and put a cut, each day a cut, just to make sure I can get all the recording stuff together, because my camera's just being funky these days. I don't know why. Maybe I need a new camera. I don't have the money for a new camera, but maybe I need a new camera. So Wednesday, we started off with my wife playing Twilight Struggle while I watched the little one. So she started the family off with a game against an opponent who signed up on the schedule. My wife has played Twilight Struggle a fair bit with me, so she's used to playing me, but not used to playing other opponents. And she played as the Soviet Union in this game. That is the faction she usually plays, because I think when we first got the game, that's how we divvied up the factions, and just every time we replayed it, she wanted to figure out the faction strategy, and so she always kept playing the Soviet Union. So she did here, and there were times where she was on the back heel. She managed to kind of pull it forward to 0 victory points, or 1 victory point in her favor, but just eventually the U.S. player managed to win. In sort of like the late turns, I think. I'm not sure they got a 20 victory. I think it was maybe by the end of turn 10 or something like that. So, she lost, which, hey, that's okay. She's going to have a good rest of the convention, as we'll get to. But, Twilight Struggle is a great game. It really is a fantastic design. Strategic level, I guess you could consider it strategic level Cold War game where you're dealing with influencing nations and cooing their governments to put a favorable government in place to support your worldview, and just really, really brilliant game design. Really a lot of fun. but it's a game that somebody can become a shark at it, and I don't know that her opponent was necessarily a shark, but there's like an app that you can play a computer at on like your phone or a tablet. So there's a venue where people can get really, really good at Twilight Struggle, and I'm not sure myself or my wife have ever developed our skills to that degree of being sharks. So I don't know, but it's a fun game. It's worth a play. She still had a good time with it. We always do when we play this. This is really the game that got me headed in the right direction of wargaming, because once I knew about GMT, I discovered everything else that was available. So she had a good time with this. That was her Wednesday morning. Had a good time. Now for me, I started in the early afternoon the much anticipated Nations in Arms. Now the challenge here is that Nations in Arms is a big game. It's a big monster game. And it does take a while to play if you're playing like the whole campaign of something like 1805 to 1814 or whatever. And so what I had done was I said, well, let's shoot for the 1813 to 1814 scenario, which comes out to be 8 seasonal turns. And I had set it up, months in advance to say, hey, we're playing this. We're going to play with the rewritten rules that are available on Board Game Geek from Bjorn or Delirium_EU. That's his username. He rewrote the rules to a much more coherent rule set with better clarifications, and just it works a lot better. And I had set that up, but hoping that the people who would sign up would do some reading the rules. Well, when we got to the table, I have to thank a guy named Terry who played in the game. He helped set up the game while I was taking care of my daughter. But by the time everyone else had shown up, it had turned out that really only Terry and I had read the rules like at all. Or the others had sort of skimmed through it, but it didn't really seem like they had a huge knowledge of the rules, which meant that we spent a lot of time just teaching and getting everybody familiar with the processes. Here's how you move. Here's the things you need to worry about, and everything else. And we ended up only playing 2 turns, spring 1813 and summer 1813. And I'll say that I think everybody at the table had a good time. And I will 100% say this game is awesome. This is a super cool game. The decisions that we were making in terms of like maneuvering and force composition and overextending yourself, and sieging the right places to extend your supply, like all the decision making was awesome, and it was very cool. I think everyone at the table recognized that this was a very cool game, very neat, definitely more in depth and a little more complicated than say like the Napoleonic Wars card driven game that exists from GMT, but just its own sort of this is the World in Flames of Napoleonic of the Napoleonic Wars. And yeah, you might look at Empires in Arms as an equivalent here. This game at least stands as its own sort of. It stands on its own 2 feet as a really cool game. Again, with the rewritten rules, of course, which, that's its own asterisk around it, right? You can best enjoy this game using the rewritten rules. That's going to be relevant when I talk about my Thursday game, but. Yeah, so we only managed the 2 turns, but everyone had a good time. Probably the only person who kind of had some disengagement was the player who had played Turkey. And when we got everybody together, I said, hey, if it turns out I'm the only one who has really read the rules a lot and can help guide the game, and I'm the host, right? I want everyone to have a good time because I'm hosting. I can play Turkey, the power that probably has the least amount of stuff to do or engagement, and everyone else, I'll be neutral for most of the game probably, and I'll just help everybody. But nobody was then confident enough, like everyone was scared to play anything, and they ended up forcing me to play France, which is fine, and worked out because in 1813 France is sort of on the defensive, and so I was able to use my knowledge to put up a good fight against everybody else, but I was fighting everybody else pretty much the whole time. But the Turkey player felt disengaged because he didn't feel like. One, he didn't have the right rules, so what little rules running he did weren't the rewritten rules, and I think he was really tired, and he just wasn't engaged in the game fully, and he felt like there wasn't much to do. Now, I disagree with the whole premise there, because I think if you're a Turkish player in a 7-player game, there is things for you to do, and you need to make it happen yourself. You need to figure out what you want to do and execute it. But I think he was just so disengaged that he left a lot of things undone when he could have been doing a lot more. And he ended up playing at another table for a while, and I don't know. There was some weirdness there with that. But overall, everybody was having a good time. Again, recognition that this is a cool game. Would love to get it to the table again in the future at a convention. And I tell you, this is one of those games where it was like, man, if only we had more time. And that's the eternal struggle when it comes to these conventions, right? Some folks show up and they're going to play one big game all 4 or 5 days for the duration of the convention, so they can play something to the fullest extent with some people and play it, day after day after day sequentially. But the other view is you try to play as many different things as you can because there's a great opportunity to play lots of stuff. I could see this being a great game to set up and play across an entire convention. And if everyone actually knew the rules ahead of time, you could get jumping on it a lot faster. You could do setup a lot faster, and basically, smash your way through and have a great time. We still had a great time, like I said, and I would really like to do coverage of this game on the channel here in the future. I'm very enamored with it, and I made a special point to say on Facebook, I think I tagged Compass Games, and I'm not sure if they saw it or not. I don't know if they have the permissions to see it because it's in the GameON Facebook group, but basically said, don't let this game fade away because this is currently, I think, out of print. When they did the restock, Compass had the restock, but they only had so many copies. I don't know if they've sold out of those copies, but it wasn't a true reprint. They weren't printing new materials besides the rulebook. They were using older components that they still had in stock to create full games here. But otherwise, the game's going to be out of print and won't be around. And I really hope that somehow, someday, Compass can turn around and republish this fully as a full print, because I think it deserves it. It absolutely deserves it. But they need to work with Bjorn. They need to work with Bjorn and let him be a developer for it, and help ensure that the designer's intention is translated from French to English or whatever properly, and that the game catches all the clarification stuff. That would be great if they ever did a true second edition of this. But besides that, again, super great game. If you have an opportunity to get this, I suggest that you do. It's super cool. Again, if I can fit it into my unsettled schedule, it would be good to do some of this stuff on camera and show you guys how cool of a game it is. Again, very cool game. I had a lot of fun with this one. We played into the night, and we only got so far, but it was cool. So that was the Wednesday. That's what we did on Wednesday. My wife played Twilight Struggle in the morning. I played Nations in Arms. Had a good time with that in the afternoon and evening. And I'll put a cut here, and we'll talk about what happened on Thursday. Okay, so on Thursday, I played Onward Christian Soldiers. Now, this was going to be a game that my wife and I were both going to play in and have our daughter with us, but just taking care of our kid was proving to be a little more difficult than we anticipated, and just making sure that she was being looked after well and that she was doing okay in a new environment. So, and once my wife got a closer look at the game, she said, maybe I'm not sure I would like this game. I'm going to sit this one out and just hang out with our kid and take care of her. And so she went and did that, which allowed us to have another open space at the table, which we did end up filling. And we had a full table of 7 people for this. Now, this is Richard Berg's Crusades game. And you can kind of see, there's the map. If you're playing with 7 players, you're going to play the first Crusade with the North Franks, South Franks, Sicilian Normans, and then Germans against the Mosul Turks, and then the North and South Syrians. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this was a difficult one, and gosh, it's such an odd topic to talk through as sort of a after-the-fact recollection of it all. So here's the thing. We managed to play 3 turns, which the scenario that we were playing is a lot more turns than that. And I kind of knew, because it was scheduled. It was the only thing we had scheduled. It was going to be from 9 a.m. to into the evening, and by the time all was said and done, we had gotten through the three turns that we had gotten through. And I think this was a very frustrating time for everyone at the table, for a couple of reasons. The rules are kind of a mess, and I say kind of because I think all the right bits are there for the game to work, but they are not as intuitive as one would like. And my understanding, the background history is that Richard Berg put this out. The developer didn't do a whole lot of good work after it was published to keep supporting it, and Berg never came back to it. I guess he moved on to design other games, and this got left in the dust, which is probably why this game has only gotten printed in 2006, and that was it. And it was a relatively limited run. The game has rulebook and then the quick start rules, and we found eventually, after the game was over, that there were rules that are intended to be in the rulebook but are not, and are only in the quick start rules, which is super weird. There's a ravaging mechanic, which disrupts the resources a city has to maintain an army inside its walls and to stay safe and fed. And you're supposed to set, if you ravage a city, set resources to 0, but the rulebook doesn't say that. The quick start rules say it. And I had it in my brain because I had read both, and I was trying to tell people, oh, this is how ravaging works, but they couldn't find it in the rulebook. That's where they were looking. We also had a big snafu around how battle victory is determined, like who's the winner, who's the loser, and how losses are supposed to be calculated. And we got into kind of a heated argument at the table that I think ultimately, like, I had the right of it, but a friend of mine was across the table and was my opponent in the battle that we had fought, and was trying to infer things that just were not there. And because everyone else at the table just didn't know, it was like, who's the right person? I'll just say, I'm right. I was right in that argument because of how the rule book sets out the sequence of combat and what matters, but it is not explained in a very good way. And sort of in the aftermath of all of that, as we were playing through, folks were recognizing that there is a good game here, but right now you kind of have to dig for it, and you need to try to make some inferences around the rules to make sure that you're understanding things right. And it just was not, I don't think, at the end of the day, I don't think it was developed well. And since its release, there have been repeated calls for errata documents. Those have never manifested. And most atrociously of all, just the worst thing I've ever heard of, somebody had once put together an FAQ errata document to help people out. And it was posted to Consim World at some point, and one of the developers had it removed. One of the official developers had it removed because it wasn't official, and they were working on an official version. And yeah, the official version would, in theory, be better. But that developer ended up never doing that, which is bullshit to me, right? That's atrocious. And now you can't find whatever work that person had put together, even if it was not finalized, it was only a work in progress, whatever. You can't even find that document because they had it removed. So right now, it's like, what do you do if you want to play this game? Well, you got to track down different FAQs people have pulled together to get the right answers for things. You got to kind of work your way through Consim World discussions. There's a good game here, but it needs to be developed, and it needs to have somebody who's not going to just abandon it because I guess they're too busy. It needs someone to just finish developing the game. And that, it's kind of shame on the developer, honestly, like total shame on the developer for letting this game get abandoned. It is a huge disservice because I think the game that is in here, that's, in the rough, is a good one. And I think folks could have fun. I think we were just on the verge of, some of us were starting to have fun as we were finally putting the Lego pieces together, but it's like, this could have been so much clearer. And so one of the things I'd like to do with one of my other friends who was at the table is try to put together our version of an updated, rewritten rules for this game. And do kind of like what Bjorn did for Nations in Arms, I'd like to be able to do for this game. And take the work that others have done, include that, and provide a rewritten rules document PDF that are the rules that come with the game, but having been appropriately rewritten to include the clarifications that have been discovered over time, and the missing rules that actually are supposed to be there but currently are not, and make it so that the game actually flows well. And if we make that PDF available, maybe next year, I'll run this, and I'll get everybody a copy of the rules rewrite PDF that we would put together, and then finally, people the world over can enjoy Onward Christian Soldiers in a proper context, not the mismanaged and misdeveloped version that was published and maybe rotting on people's game shelves unplayed because of its broken state. I want to try to fix that if I can. I don't know how much time I can dedicate to doing that, but I have this urge to want to fix things, and this is a thing that I feel like deserves to be fixed, because again, I think there is a good game here. It just right now doesn't present itself well as one. So that's what I did on Thursday. It ended up being a really tough day. I think a lot of people got frustrated. I got really frustrated, more than maybe I should have, and not great sleep probably didn't help with that. And everyone just trying to figure out what to do here. We as the Crusaders got as far as starting to siege Antioch, and things just sort of slowed down from there. But hey, that's how it goes. All right, so that was it for Thursday. We'll talk about Friday next. Okay, so on Friday in the morning, my wife hosted and ran Fire in the Lake, Urgency in Vietnam. This is the fourth volume of the coin series. In my opinion, this is the best coin game. I guess I haven't played Pendragon, but I've played Gandhi. I've played all the other ones. Just never got around to playing Pendragon. But out of all the ones I've played, this is my favorite. I think this is the best one. I think it's the best one as it's been put together. And with the coming expansion for this thing, it's going to get even better, I think. So I did not actually play in this. My wife did. She controlled the North Vietnamese Army, or NVA, and she had a table of 3 other players. And I'm sort of telling you this like secondhand, but the game went well. They managed to play all the way through the end of the last coup card, which sort of represents like a major turnover phase, which happens like every 10 cards or something like that. If you don't understand the coin series, what I'm saying probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you. But they played basically to the end, where the game stops and no one had won an automatic victory. And when they adjudicated, who was the winner, it was a tie, which the NVA wins the tie matchup in her case, and so she was a winner. She won, she did the same thing last year. I think she ran Fire in the Lake last year, and she played like the Viet Cong, and she won that, I think. So watch out, guys. My wife is a shark player of Fire in the Lake. She's very good at it. Probably, I'll say she's probably better than me at it at this point, because she's probably played it more than I have now. Because she'll play it. She's hosted it now without me while I'm playing other stuff. And if we're not playing together, those are times she's playing it without me, and she's probably getting better at it. So this was a good game for her. She enjoyed it, and she won. Fire in the Lake really is just a fantastic game. You can see, let me get this on screen for you. Map of Vietnam with cities and regions and all sorts of things. I think what makes this such a great coin game is that it shows the insurgency and counterinsurgency of the Vietnam War. It has all the card events that help drive the narrative, and you can put the cards in year order, so things happen progressively in a certain way to history. But there's also, more conventional forces that are trying to do things, and that struggle is really interesting, and the coming expansion is going to make it so that you can play a more focused conventional battle between the ARVN and the NVA in the 73 to 75 phase of the Vietnam War, which is going to add some interesting replayability to play those scenarios when the expansion comes out, as well as to play the full campaign of 64 to 75, where once you reach the 72 time frame, there is a Paris Peace Accords thing, and you switch to using some of the expansion mechanics. It's going to be really neat to try that out. I might even cover that on the channel when the expansion comes out. But really cool game, really great game. My wife had a good time playing it, and yeah, it was a good time. So then what I ended up playing, and I'm just going to make this easy on myself rather than to go grab the box. Once her game was over, and it ran longer than we thought, I got to play Thunder in the East with a nice guy who brought his copy and had it set up all day. One of the players who was going to play with them had bowed out. I was going to join later in the afternoon. I ended up having to join later than expected. And so he sort of had gotten some play for a little bit during the day before I joined. and I picked up when it was about July 1941 within the Barbarossa scenario. So we played the rest of July, and we started just the beginning of August. So we got basically, it was like 4 or 5 player turns, and so I got to be careful how I talk to this one, because it is very much like a first impression. But I really, really liked it. I really enjoyed Thunder in the East. Now, obviously I'm still playing the Dark Valley, right? So much of what I was doing and playing and seeing was like in my head. I'm kind of comparing to the Dark Valley, but I'm trying to look at this as a system game because ultimately, the Dark Valley is its self-contained game about the East Front. Thunder in the East is ultimately going to be a larger component of the ETO system, of Frank Chadwick's European Theater of Operations. And yeah, Thunder in the East is a standalone game, but ultimately this system is going to be made to fit other fronts. And so, even with all that in mind, I think this game manages to do a lot of really cool things. It does things differently than the Dark Valley. And right now, if you were to ask me, Steve, which do you think is better? I don't think I could tell you that. Because I found myself enjoying it just as much as I've enjoyed the Dark Valley in terms of, the cool operational things that you're doing and the decisions you're making and the maneuvering and dancing around of forces trying, a cauldron battle erupted here in Thunder in the East when we played. Just west of Kiev, and that was kind of interesting to see how we could manage that. And there's actually pictures from our game. If you go to the Frank Chadwick's ETO Facebook page, there's pictures from that game that just got posted. I guess maybe I could show those pictures myself, but it'll be easier if I don't. But if you're interested, you can take a look. It was really cool. And the game has constraints around logistics and supply that are interesting, but handled slightly differently than how the Dark Valley does it. I don't know. I came away from it thinking, this is a really cool game system. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I have a copy, and I'm interested to see what's going to be coming next in the series. I don't think Thunder in the East replaces the Dark Valley or vice versa. The Dark Valley is a really great East Front game. This is a great system that happens to have an East Front portion, and it seems to be a pretty cool game. And I will say the components of Thunder in the East are just really great, really awesome. You can kind of see it here. Those counters, I don't think this picture does them justice. When you see them in person, gosh, the components just pop. The graphical art is just really nice. Even this rule book is just well laid. Like, there's a lot of rules here, but it's laid out really well. They use these sidebar really well in terms of like what information are they putting in that sidebar to help you understand the pages you're reading. So I really might have mentioned this before, maybe with an unboxing I did way back. Like, Thunder in the East has just really fantastic components. I hope that future games in this system are just as good from a component standpoint, because they were just absolutely fantastic. Really cool components. Again, gameplay was really, really fun. The funny thing is, like, for as many rules as there are in this rulebook, the game plays a lot simpler, right? The rules have to explain a lot of these different things to you, but a lot of it is really just, you're moving units, you're doing the combat factors, the ratios. Some of the things like the air power, you kind of got to learn how that works and what's the right way to use them. But the air power, makes a lot of sense, it's straightforward. Once you learn the symbols on the counters, that kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. I might have preferred numbers or something, better indicators than the symbols they use on those air counters. You can look up pictures of those and you'll know what I'm talking about. But just, again, overall, really cool game. Really enjoyed my time with it. Might do stuff on it on the channel in the future. We'll have to see. Maybe when the next game in the series, The Middle Sea, comes out. That covers the North Africa and Mediterranean and Italy, I think, and maybe some of Greece. I can't remember. That's still in play testing. They got a Vassal module out there. The one kind of goofy thing is that with this, there's talk of Thunder in the East 2. If you go to Consim World and forums, what that is, because I've sort of captured in my head what's supposed to be happening here, is they're going to be making some changes because the ETO rules as a larger set of rules need to change a little bit, and they kind of need to retrofit Thunder in the East, and some of that change actually means changing some of the cards, changing some of the counters, and changing certain things. And so when the Middle Sea comes out, or sometime around that time frame, there will be a new rule book that is like the system rule book that you can use with Thunder in the East, that you can use with the Middle Sea, whatever. And then there's going to very likely be an update kit so that you can update your existing copy of Thunder in the East with the new cards and with whatever else is changing, so you can play the latest version of Thunder in the East with the right rule set and all that stuff. Now, I've heard, as a knock against the games, people have said that due to the way that the original Thunder in the East rules are set up and just different things, that there are some maybe gamey, unbalanced things that make it so the Axis can never win. You know, sometimes I hear like the Axis can't win in the Dark Valley. Some of that I think comes down to like the players being, figuring out the faction and how to best use them. But there might, if there are indeed balance issues here, the idea is those are going to be hammered out when the switch to the full rule set and Thunder in the East 2, or whatever they're calling it, gets officially released with the update kit. And then, everything should be hopefully hammered out by then. So I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be a game series I'm going to be watching. Really looking forward to seeing what comes out here. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with this one, even with the short amount of time I really had with it. We ended up playing for like 6 to 8 hours with some breaks and food, and kind of the slow going is sort of learning the rules. The person I was playing with was a good teacher and helping me, because I hadn't, I'd read the rules but not enough of the rules, and we managed through. I was the Axis, and by the time I had taken over for the Germans, when I was able to play, they had made some progress where I was able to get them close to, kind of close to Leningrad, which was cool. But there's still a lot of progress to make. But it was only August, so I don't know. It's weekly turns versus monthly turns, like in the Dark Valley. So you in a go, like when you take a turn, right? You don't get as far, but you got to realize that's 1 week of time, and so those across 4 weeks of a month, you can make pretty good progress there. So had a lot of fun with this. Looking forward to it in the future. Like I said, that was a fun day, and now we'll talk next about Saturday. Okay, so on Saturday, the plan was for my wife and I together, with a usual crew, play an annual game of Here I Stand, and we usually play with the same set of people. Now, unfortunately, just due to on Thursday, my wife didn't play anything, and she tried to jump on some later evening games, but unfortunately couldn't find an open table, and that was a bummer for her. She didn't get as much gaming in, and we needed to watch our girl. So I basically offered up to let her just go play Here I Stand, and I would drop from the game so she wouldn't have to worry about our girl or anything, and that we could sort of divide and conquer, and I would allow her to have a fun game carefree. And so she played Here I Stand. I was busy. And that let somebody else play who was sort of waiting in line to be able to play it, which worked out. And my wife played as the Ottomans. Now, she's quite good at Here I Stand, but she had never played the Ottomans before. She's won as the Protestants. I've seen her do very well as other factions. But this was her first Ottoman one. Now, some of the highlights there is that she did take Vienna at some point in the game. I wasn't really there for it. I saw a little bit of it. I came by to kind of watch and see what was going on. Eventually, it ended up being, I believe, a Habsburg victory, which tends to happen a lot of the time, but they did it via circumnavigation. The Pope actually was very close to winning, and according to him, the player who played the Pope, if he had played cards in a slightly different order, he would have won, and that was sort of like a statement to say, like, maybe he should have been the winner, but hey, if you're not the winner, you're not the winner. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, but he wasn't, and actually the person who replaced me at the table ended up being the winner. But everyone had a pretty good showing, and at various times my wife was in second place, but sort of fell down to, I think, third by the end game there. But Here I Stand again. Fantastic game. Probably, I do put it as one of the best games that just exist. It just is a fantastic game that is well designed and integrated, and all the factions are sort of forced to interact with one another, and there's friction, and it just makes for a hoot. And though I'm bummed that I didn't get to play this year, I'm glad that my wife was able to play a good game and that she had fun. And all that. So that was good. That was a good time. Which, because we did that, and I did not play during the majority of the day, that left me to kind of enjoy myself at night that Saturday, yesterday. And so I stayed up, I got myself some beers and hung out with my buddies, and we ended up jumping into a game of Thunder Alley. Now, this is my copy, which is actually, it's punched but unplayed because I picked it up after a friend had played it with me once upon a time, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I bought my own copy. Somebody had brought theirs and was just setting up sort of an evening game, low pressure, just drinking beers and having fun game of Thunder in the Alley, and me and my buddy jumped in. And if you don't know anything about Thunder Alley, I might accidentally call it Thunder in the Alley because it's like, Dark Valley or Thunder in the East. Like, I'm getting super confused. Thunder Alley, which is basically like, it's a NASCAR game, right? It's not officially NASCAR because they don't have a license, but it is NASCAR, right? It's NASCAR, and I'm not a NASCAR guy. Like, outside of wargaming, I don't watch NASCAR. I'm not a NASCAR person. I'm just not. But this game's a lot of fun. So it comes with a couple of different mounted maps that have different tracks on them. And those tracks are sort of laid out differently, and you can kind of see like the grid changes, and the lanes are a factor. And what you do is, like, you control a team of cars, and it's a card-driven game where you use the cards to move your individual cars along the track. Now you think, how is a racing game a board game? And there actually are a number of different racing board games. For some of you may already know that because you play them. But if you don't know that, there are a number of different ones. But this one's great. It's the only one I've really played. But what you do is, the cards will have things like draft movement or pursuit movement, which will, in effect, push a line of cars that are all connected together along those sectors, those grids, the grid spots, I guess, on the racetrack. And so basically what you're trying to do is strategize your teamwork and the position of the cars on the track to get in a draft lane behind cars that are moving, to break away from the pack, to work the pack and move, between cars to get better position. And what you're watching is that your cars are accruing wear and tear on them during the race, and you can go to a pit stop to relieve some of that. But there are permanent damage that you take to the car for the race that can be a high risk, high reward thing where you play the card, it does something really cool for you. You can zoom ahead really far, but that puts a permanent hamper on your car that might cause it to be unserviceable and be taken out of the race. But basically, by the end of a number of laps around the track, you're going to get victory points at the end for what place you take. So the first place gets, a certain number of victory points. Second place gets slightly less. Third place gets slightly less, all the way down. And it's not necessarily the person who got first place that's the winner. It's the team that had the most victory points. So if I have a car that finished first, but one that finished last, and somewhere in the middle, I might lose to a team that managed to get second, third, and fourth, because that whole team overall performed better. And you can infer that to be like, I don't know, better sponsor money. I don't know. I'm not a NASCAR guy, so some of the terms I know in terms of the game, not, necessarily what they're truly representing, but I understand drafting. I understand some of that stuff. And this just is a very cool game, very fun. When you're drinking beers with your buddies and you're keeping it kind of low key, just lighthearted fun. This is a cool one. It's a fun one. I was like middle by the end of the race. I had accrued victory points to put me kind of in the middle of the stack in terms of victory points. I was doing pretty well. I managed not to lose any cars, and I managed to control my wear and tear on my cars well, but I just didn't have a lot of great board position in the race. Sometimes I was in the lead, but by the end, the very last lap, I had just sort of lost my position a bit, and that forced me to not accrue as many victory points as I wanted. So it was a fun surprise game. I didn't know what I was going to play last night. I needed to find something. So, drinking beers, hanging out, eating food. Managed to catch a game of this and had a really good time with it. So it wasn't a complete loss Saturday. I got to play some stuff, and that was neat. So we'll stop here, and then we'll talk about today, Sunday, what we did, what we finished up with. So the final game that we ended up playing, and we played it this morning, was a game of Battlestar Galactica. Now, I've mentioned before, this game is awesome. Very cool game. If you like Battlestar Galactica, you would love this game. If you don't or never watched Battlestar Galactica, you might very well find this to be a great game. Hard to talk a lot about this one because there's so many things just in how the game works, but managed to have a good time this morning. I actually won. My team won. So in this game, you're either a human or a Cylon, or in some cases, you start as a human and then you're revealed to be a Cylon and you didn't even know it. Spoilers for the show, that can happen. And I started as a human, and I was playing, you play different characters from the show. I was playing my favorite character, William Adama, this guy right here, played by Edward James Olmos. It's my favorite character. I love playing him. In the game, I totally get into the character and playing that. And we were doing really well as the humans. We were progressing in the goals we needed to achieve. We were having a good time of it. There was a person at the table who was a Cylon, and they had not been able to mitigate a lot of what the humans were doing. But the game reaches sort of a midpoint where it's possible that it changes who the Cylons are. So whoever was a Cylon stays a Cylon, but then one of the human players may now become a Cylon, which can be troubling because if you're doing really well as the humans and you're thinking, oh, we're going to win, this is great, and then you find out that you're a Cylon, now you might be losing and you need to do something about it. Well, it had turned out that I became a Cylon player when the time came for a switch up, and I didn't like being a Cylon. I prefer to be a human because I like trying to win as a human more than I like winning as a Cylon. And I was like, okay, I could be sneaky and try to not make it obvious that I'm a Cylon, but I was really bad at that. Folks at the table could kind of tell. It's like, yeah, something's up with Steve. And I was, I certainly was a Cylon, and I kind of made that obvious. But then, when you're revealed to be a Cylon, you get certain abilities that you can execute as a Cylon player, and I was able to use those well, and it worked out that the Cylons actually won the game. So I won as a Cylon, as a betrayer. It worked out cool. Unfortunately, partway through the game, one of our players, the original Cylon player, wasn't feeling well and she had to leave, but we managed to get one of my buddies to step in and play in her place, and we managed to win, he and I. So that was really great time. Always a fun one. There were two other tables of Battlestar Galactica being played Sunday morning. So that is, for some reason, at GameON, that's just a tradition that there are multiple Battlestar Galactica games going Sunday morning, because it's just a fun, it plays in a few hours, fun game to kind of play, and then if you're heading home, you can pack up and head home. But we had fun with this one. And that was it for GameON 2020. And, again, I'll say, we had a good time this year, even with sort of the audibles. We had a call having our baby with us. But really, our baby was well behaved at the time we were there. Got to see people. Got to meet Jonathan, who I guess has watched the channel in the past, and it was nice to meet him and chat with him. And just as usual, a lot of good folks. There was somebody there running a all-convention game of A World at War. My buddy was helping run that, and he really likes A World at War. And it was kind of interesting to see that all set up. And, I have a special relationship with The World at War, but it was kind of neat to see it set up, and people were playing it and enjoying it, and that was cool. And, yeah, like I said, as always, it's just great to see people. So, again, I'll say, if you don't go to conventions, go. The guy I played Thunder in the East with, it was actually his first convention that he had really gone to, his first Wargame convention. And he had been in the area for years and just he didn't know that the convention existed. So he's been wargaming sort of in an island for a while. And he brought Thunder in the East. This is his opportunity to play it. And he did, and he had a good time. And I'm going to stay in contact with him and maybe game with him in the future. And now he'll come to the convention. So it's just, again, a great thing. If you've not made it out to one, go to Google or your search engine of choice and search, Wargame conventions near me. You might be surprised. There might be one nearby. or at least a distance you'd be willing to travel once a year for a long weekend, and have fun. I really recommend it. So okay, I think that's it. Life's going to return a little bit to normal, I hope, now that we're back. So we'll get to the Dark Valley again soon, and other games after that. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. It's sort of a weird thing. If you're interested in it, cool. You might not be. What do you care what somebody else does at a convention? But for those who are interested, it went well. We had fun. We had a couple of rocky situations with some of the games, but good things are coming out of it. So all good stuff. So until the next one, guys, take care and keep on gaming.